let's kick it off. We've only got 30 minutes and we've got 50 plus examples to synthesize insights from. I'm Raymond. I'm the founder of Twill. Twill is a community of thousands of founders, investors, and execs, primarily located in the Bay Area, but we're expanding to different cities. And it's a pleasure for all of you to join all of you here. And what Twill does is we connect founders, investors, executives with their next client, business partner, team member, investor, and beyond. So that's really our goal is to elevate the folks in our community so that we can connect you with relevant folks to help you along your journey. And today we have a very, very exciting um, webinar. And Puneet and team synthesize insights from 50 plus companies to share with you what they're finding about AI pricing. And pricing is kind of moving away from a per seat model. Um, Now, customers much more complex than just a seat. One customer may call additional agents in their workflow. They may call different models, more premium models in their workflow. They may require longer context windows and generally consume different amount of tokens. So you have different customer profiles, two vastly different customer profiles. So it's no longer um, enough to just kind of group things together by seat. And so Puneet and Jason are going to go more into that. I'd like to introduce the team at Amberflo, Puneet and Jason. Puneet is a longtime AWS exec. He served as GM until he started Amberflo. And Jason has been a longtime engineer and engineering manager before he moved on to the product manager role at Amberflo. So highly technical team with a lot of experience. And Amberflo is also backed by some of the best Norwest venture partners and Homebrew. And with that, I'll let Puneet take it away.
Awesome, Raymond. Thank you so much. Thanks for the intro. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, folks, for joining. I'm really excited to be here with you today. Thanks for taking the time from your busy day. Let's get right into it. We've got only about 30 minutes. I think we've got some pretty exciting agenda and items to cover with you. Maybe just 30 seconds on logistics. I know some folks have asked if we're going to be sharing the slides. Yes, we will send the slides after the webinar to you. Webinar is being recorded, so we'll also look to publish the recording. With that said, let's get underway. So as Raymond already mentioned, Jason Ferguson, one of our PMs. I'm Puneet Gupta. I'm the founder CEO. Just a little bit about the background of the company. We are venture-backed, based in the Bay Area. Our sort of trials and tribulations with, I think, what's being termed today as usage-based pricing, increasingly becoming more sort of outcome-based pricing. We kind of cut our teeth with this back in the day, early days of AWS. I was a general manager there. A couple of others who came to start the company, Amberflo, with me also worked at AWS, where we saw and played a small part, at least, in inside AWS when we were building our own metering and billing infrastructure. So if you've ever held or seen an AWS bill and pause for a second to see what must be going on behind the scenes and how they're generating that bill, that is the infrastructure that I'm talking about, metering and billing. So a lot of our thesis and design principles are obviously shaped from that experience. With that said, let's just kind of put out the agenda a little bit. So 30 minutes, we're going to aim to cover quite a bit. We'll start off by really just highlighting what is different about pricing for AI, right? I mean, pricing, billing, of course, for software has been around forever, but fundamentally, why, as the old adage goes, what got you here won't get you there. It's kind of in the similar realm. So we'll unpack that. Then we'll talk about some case studies. What are some of the companies doing who are already making this transition from a traditional model into pricing for AI as more and more infrastructure shifts towards AI and LLMs? We'll then transition into what might be the right pricing model for you. Every one of you have your own set of products and services. I'm sure they're also going through an evolution. Some of you are building net new products, AI native products. Some of you are expanding, incorporating AI capabilities. What might be the right pricing model for you? So we'll spend a little bit of time and highlighting some popular models, ones that have already played out to success. And then last but not least, with all that said, how do you actually sort of put the pedal to the metal? How do you actually, operationalize this? How do you productize this? How do you take it to market? So how do you enable the strategy? And obviously that comes down to having tools and platforms that will enable you to be successful in this transition, or if you're building from the ground up. So we'll unpack what makes for a platform that we would consider AI native, or that enables you to build AI native pricing and billing. Each one of these topics is a loaded topic. This is overall an emerging space. There's a lot that's being talked about. So this primarily is going to be essentially a primer. We're going to touch on essentially on each one of these aspects. We're hoping we'll come back to you with additional webinars, take a deeper dive in one or more areas. So today will be essentially a primer, but hopefully you walk away with some good insights. If there's any suggestions, or you have anything more top of mind, please drop that comment in the chat, and we'll look to either address it here or in the following webinars. Okay. So this really should come as no surprise. We ourselves sort of been looking for some data. I was surprised to see in 2026 already, it's projected to be 2.5 trillion in AI spending. If you think about where it just all started, it hasn't been, I think, more than what, 2 or 3 years when we first saw their first chat GPT, I think 3.5. So the spend is really accelerating. I think 2026 is where the year of agentic, or the use cases are being operationalized, productized. So a lot going on there. Now, there are a couple of gaps, or sort of challenges that are surfacing as part of this increased and rapid spending. One is that companies are finding it somewhat difficult to tie their AI spend to an actual impact to revenue, essentially. So their AI spend is increasing. What is the correlation to? Is the revenue increasing? And are they able to tie that together? So there seems to be some gaps, misalignment, and what it is, and we'll unpack more of this as we go along. It's actually related to how you do cost attribution, how you're tracking these variable costs, and ultimately, how are you able to tie that back to customer usage? That is basically what this gap is ultimately. The other is there's compression on margins. So in the traditional SaaS industry, I think by and large, the high watermark is about 80-90% people who achieve a level of scale, maturity, um, sort of a recurring, product market fit template, tend to operate at 80-90%. That's sort of the traditional SaaS fixed subscription recurring business model. AI natives are finding that, they're sort of tapping out at maybe 50 to 60% margin ratio. And again, there's a reason for that. Our view is, again, there's some misalignment between underlying costs and what you're claiming as revenue, which is basically the function of margin. So, what is it about AI that is compressing the margins? So, we'll address some of that. Again, it will come down to ultimately how you price and bill, and more importantly, how you collect. Just to again sort of call attention to what makes pricing for AI, or AI artifacts, AI products and services, different from traditional SaaS. Here are some of the key highlights. There's actually more, but this kind of nets out the equation. One is in the traditional SaaS world, it started with obviously, fixed capital infrastructure. Then as we moved to the cloud, it became variable expense, albeit in a multi-tenant architecture, things were still somewhat boxed in. And bringing on a new user didn't really move your costs a whole lot. If you were in a multi-tenant, you already kind of planned for that set of infrastructure, And those guardrails or those boundaries, you had flexibility to bring on additional users without really having a direct impact to your cost. Uh, in the AI realm, it completely flips. Every user, every transaction that is consuming tokens, and increasingly everything will and is, has a direct correlation to cost, or it will cost you. So adding every user or any new user has a bearing on cost. Second, in the SaaS world, um, you recall there were things like for administrator roles or heavy users or people who had access to perhaps different set of functions within your product, you could charge more based on type or caliber of users. In the AI world, you don't have those set boundaries. An admin user may actually be not using the AI features as much versus a simply a consumer, a traditional user or viewer who may be consuming more LLM tokens. So that equation doesn't translate to the AI world from the SaaS world. In the AI world, your cost must reflect and have a correlation to your underlying variable costs. You could argue that even in the world of cloud, the underlying costs were somewhat variable, compute instances, storage, but in the AI world, the costs are further highly variable. If you look at LLMs, of the different landscape of LLMs, we're seeing ratios of anywhere. One model could be 250 times more expensive than a lesser or cheaper model. And that landscape is going to change as you experiment with new models, with new features. So there's variable cost every time a user is brought on and every time a user is using aspects of your products and services. Billing risk with traditional SaaS was low for the reasons already mentioned. Costs were primarily fixed. In AI, the risk is high, costs are highly variable, and they scale with every transaction, with every use. Let's look at maybe a couple of companies um, that we are seeing. I mean, everybody's kind of making sort of this transition. We'll talk through, how do you make this transition successfully? What are some of the stepping stones? So we'll outline how some of the companies are first recognizing this change and then gradually moving into embracing this change and then updating their business model and pricing model. Intercom has already done it. So they were traditionally a seat-based. Maybe some of you are already users of Intercom. And more recently, they are now seat plus outcome based. Now, outcome based is again is a usage based vector. Um, and what they decided to do is for trouble tickets that are solved, they are charging 99 cents per resolved ticket. Behind the scenes, what they've done is obviously there are AI LLM costs that are associated with tickets being resolved. Some could be automated or whatever the infrastructure is behind the scenes. And they have chosen to amortize that, at least align it somewhat with usage. So every time a ticket is resolved, it's 99 cents, and they're amortizing their AI costs behind the scenes into that. So the more tickets are resolved, they are automatically scaling their revenue. Here's Apollo, marketing automation. So the approach that they've taken from a traditional fixed seat-based is seat-based plus included credits. So this is also a common model. And what this involves then is you have to basically update your product catalog, and for the line items that you wish to charge, you start pricing them in credits. So every use equates to a certain amount of credits that are then drawn down from the credits that are included in the plan that you subscribe to. So this is one way, again, how you can start to align your underlying costs to usage. And this also seems to be a popular plan. Okay. Let's look at broadly what are some of the popular AI pricing models, right? So based on a couple of examples that we just looked at, the the catchphrase is something called hybrid. You'll hear this quite a bit, and this is a transition point for as more and more companies are looking to now bridge the gap between their variable cost to the revenue. Hybrid is a good place to kind of step in or think of it as a stepping stone if you're coming from a legacy of fixed or subscription-based pricing, which allows you to essentially add some usage limits on features or items that are that are dependent on underlying variable costs, right? So we saw some examples of that. And this is a good way to kind of start your journey towards more usage-based pricing and billing models, where you can take a set fixed subscription, have different pricing plans, but within each pricing plan, you can set certain limits for each of the services or features that are offered. Okay. But this will still not get you to maximizing your revenue. We consider this is essentially a stopgap. It buys you some time in a good way, gives you some time to build some internal operational tooling, insights, discipline around what it takes to manage and scale a usage-based pricing and billing model as you kind of ease your way into this. But ultimately, you will have to graduate from here into more of a modern, next generation, usage-based native pricing plan. What does that look like? So, this is basically where the world is headed and where ultimately you will find yourself. And again, for the simple fact that increasingly more and more of your underlying infrastructure is going to be of variable cost. Another way to sort of simply think about this, how even from the cloud era is going to change into the AI era, is if AI and LLMs are going to increasingly form the bulk of your IT infrastructure, then those are highly variable costs. Right? So you have to eventually graduate to a more usage-based native pricing and billing. And that is the model that most directly aligns with your cost structure and automatically scales with it. So as the name implies, usage-based automatically scales with usage. Customers pay for what they use uh, and how much they use. Now, there are a couple of things I'm sure some of you have already heard. There are some nuances to usage-based. Clearly, it's a little bit of a heavier lift than simply doing, let's say, $99 per user per month. That's obviously a lot simpler from various perspectives, just even to put it out there, to manage it, and also for the buyer, for the customer to really internalize and maybe forecast. Usage-based does present some nuances when it comes to having visibility. What will this cost me month over month, or what might it cost me over the year if I'm just paying on usage? Because my usage obviously will change um, as the usage pattern changes. So one of the popular ways to overcome that is to think about it in the following terms. That nuance is actually not a limitation of the business model. So if you think about it, um, all the cloud providers, perhaps AWS was the pioneer in launching the usage-based pricing, they would have dialed it back if usage-based business model didn't scale and didn't scale effectively and didn't scale profitably. If that was the case, they would have dialed it back a long time ago. The model, there's no inherent problems with the model of usage-based. You need proper tooling, you need proper infrastructure, and then there's certain artifacts, constructs that you can layer on top of usage-based, things like prepaid credits and drawdowns that help take the edge or sort of come full circle on providing visibility into forecasting or budgeting. So we'll talk more about that, but that's the usage base. Another one that is increasingly becoming popular, we already saw uh, Intercom do that, is outcome based. Uh, Another way to look at it, outcome-based basically is another form of usage-based. Whatever it is that you're charging that for you becomes an successful outcome, at the end of the day, you will still have to meter and track that, how many of those and at what price point. But having said that, if you do have something in your portfolio, your product that can go down that path, it is the most sticky model. I mean, there's just never any going to be any contention against an outcome-based pricing, right? So the thing to know is it doesn't have to be a binary either or. You could have some fixed components, you could have some usage-based components, and you can also have some outcome-based components. That is the flexibility of a usage-based business model, where it gives you those levers as you're building new products and services, launching new features, you can dial them to what makes sense for different kinds of products or services and features that you're launching. Credits and drawdowns, this is more of a overlay construct rather than a billing model per se. Everything that we have looked at so far, whether it's even a fixed with usage limits or a pure play usage-based plan or an outcome-based plan, credits and drawdowns is basically an overlayer that assists with providing forecast visibility, budgeting visibility, where customers can buy credits in a pool of credits that could be amortized over a year, and they simply draw down against that based on actual usage and consumption. So here's sort of the three popular ones. At the end of the day, usage-based and outcome-based are AI native. That is essentially what will put you on cruise control. You can definitely start with hybrid. If you are, as I mentioned, traditionally on a seat-based plan, you can move into a hybrid realm, stay there for a while, gather insights, develop internal tooling, operational insights, discipline, and then move towards a more usage-based, outcome-based native business model. How do you choose what might be the right model for you? Um, so if you are an existing SaaS company, as I said, if you already got, if you are traditional per seat with multiple different plans, starter plan, a pro plan, a business plan, enterprise plan, you can keep that, but within those plans, you can start to introduce some usage limits on certain line items. That's basically the hybrid approach, right? If you are an AI native company, you already have an advantage. If you don't have that legacy, you can really start with a full-on usage-based pricing model where essentially you're not really offering plans, you're essentially offering your catalog. Each catalog item is rated on a individual rate, and your customers consume different features and they get charged for each one of those features and they all get aggregated uh, on the monthly billing period. If you're an early stage startup, if you're just getting out, you may not know what might be those usage vectors that are worthy of putting a price point that will actually scale effectively. So if you're early stage, you'll be perfectly fine. Start with the hybrid approach. Run it for maybe a few months till you gather those data sets and insights on how your usage and features and usage are products is being used, and then leverage that insights to build an effective usage-based pricing plan. As you go through this, a few mistakes to avoid. Um, the easiest trap to fall into is just simply price for an average user. That's not going to work. You probably yourself have seen it. Uh, on any transaction, somebody can upload or can really take AI LLM tokens to task. They can really dial up the tokens. There's no really way to amortize that or distill that down at a per user level. So don't fall into that trap. Simply cannot copy, therefore, an existing SaaS model and assume it will just work itself out over the long term. It will not. And put metering and cost tracking in place. Treat that as sort of first-class citizen. Use that as the basis, as the foundational building block for you to position yourself to go towards usage-based pricing and billing. What might you then need from a platform that enables you to successfully do that? Uh, you will see an billing and pricing platform that enables you and gives you this flexibility, not just one of these plans, but supports all three of these different pricing models and allows you to gradually move from one to the other without sort of lock stock, stock and barrel sort of ripping and replacing. You can gradually grandfather folks from one type of pricing model to another. You need a platform that supports it all. And these are some of the new constructs that you're going to need in a modern AI pricing and billing platform that will enable you to do that. So things like real-time metering, which is tracking how much usage is taking place, and at the same time, giving you the cost profile, your internal cost profile for what this is costing you, what this customer is costing you, and then allowing you to then rate that usage for the pricing plans, the different types of pricing plans that we've discussed, generating a real-time, on-demand, metered invoicing, billing, giving you the margin visibility because it also has cost attribution and tracking, enabling you with things like guardrails, alerts, cost guards, so you can set limits and thresholds where if the credit has been drawn down and is being depleted, what happens, or if the usage suddenly spikes, or if the invoice amount suddenly spikes or drops. So you have those alerts that you can react and take action. And then ultimately, revenue recognition. This is a different type of revenue recognition versus what it was for $99 per user per month. You are now tracking credits, drawdowns, usage, consumption. So you need a platform that is built for that. Here's another way how you can kind of think about the platform. Metering is the horizontal layer. Metering is the usage tracking and instrumentation layer. And on top of your metering infrastructure, then you want to have a cost tracking solution that is setting a rate for your usage, your internal rates of what it's costing you to run the AI and LLM infrastructure or your other IT infrastructure. And then you need, of course, a full feature, full stack pricing, rating, invoicing, and billing engine that's also leveraging that data. With that said, let's just kind of give you maybe a primer of what a platform looks like with all of those combined. I'll invite Jason to at least show you some highlights of that platform, and that way you got some ideas of what a modern AI native pricing and billing platform takes shape.
All right. So hopefully everyone can hear me. I know it looks like I'm muted, but I'm going through Puneet's mic. So, all right. So obviously Puneet talked about kind of these three very common types of pricing plans. And the idea here is many companies right now have the seat-based. They need a way to get farther along towards something that is more usage-based. And so the idea is our platform is we want you to be able to come on, use it for exactly what you have now. So if you're on a seat base, if you're on just a subscription, no overages, anything like that, and you just want to be able to monitor how much is being used, we've got the tools there so that you can monitor, get alerted, you can start to meter and understand your usage to better inform how you're going to migrate your pricing to something that is hopefully in the long term a lot more profitable. So as we talked about here, we have easy come in and start with something that is simply subscription. You can easily add on overages with the metering, include how many units are included and only charge for the overages. And then you can also go to a full-on usage-based plan. And along the way, because you're getting all of the metering data, because you're able to understand your customer's usage and also your cost, you can make more informed decisions about what that pricing plan needs to be going long term. Next slide. So we give you all the constructs you need. At this point, we've seen almost every pricing plan, probably known to man. We try and give you all the tools to build out however you need. So if it's usage-based, seat-based, flat rate with overages, which is essentially subscription, uh, plain flat rate, if you need service fees, if you need platform fees, all of that is part of the system here. And even be able to break it down further, here you can see a slide example of we're doing usage-based, but we're doing it based on the dimensions that are passed with the meters. So you can go as deep as you need to do to get the specific billing so that you can build a profitable company. Next one. Cool. And here you can just see an example of this detailed invoice. You can, both you and your customers can see exactly what they've used, how much have they spent on each piece of your product. And again, this is up to you in terms of how much you want to show to your customers, but you have full control. So you are able to see exactly what's being used, what's being spent. And again, these are the tools you need to build profitable products with AI. Because if you simply have a subscription and they go and use a lot, your profit margins are going to shrink. And we've also spoken to a number of companies that are losing money on many of their customers. So this is the visibility that we look to provide. I'm posting a link in the chat. So if you'd like to learn more about Amberflo, go ahead and book a meeting and we'll walk you through so that we can help you figure out what is the best way for your company to build out a pricing plan and how Amberflo can help. And because it was asked a few times, I did post in the chat, but we will be sending out an email, so the slide deck and the recording will be available to you.
Awesome. Thank you, folks. And if you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to us. You can visit our website, fill out a form. We'll love to come back to you, give you a deep dive demo. If you have any questions, any suggestions for a follow-up webinar, we welcome that. Please connect with us on that front too. Hopefully this was helpful, and we hope to connect back with you again soon.